Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 62 of a year of change. This being Friday, I've got another documentary for you to watch for the weekend. Just like last week, this is one that I've actually had on the channel for a bit. And I've watched it a couple of times. And it's tough to watch. The name of the documentary, it's one that TLC did a while ago. It's called The Man Who Ate Himself to Death. And it's a story about a man named Ricky Naputi who had grown up and lived in Guam. And it just sort of follows along with his weight problems. This is someone who, at his heaviest, weighed almost 900 pounds. And at the time that they started filming the show, they weighed him in just around 700, 800, somewhere around there. And it follows the story of him trying to get help, trying to get to a stage where he can lose enough weight to go in for surgery, and the different doctors that have helped that he's gone to consult, and different methods that they're trying. The hardest part probably about watching this is his wife. I know I've sort of been a big advocate of, we're fat because of what we do to ourselves. We're the reason why we eat so much. We're the reason why we eat the bad food that we eat. All of that. But there does come a time, at some stage, in some cases, where the blame can sort of get shifted on to someone else as well. Not that it's all one person's fault, but that they enable things. And when you're watching the documentary, it's sort of tough to not do that with his wife. Because at the stage that they started filming the show, he's confined to a bed. He can't move. All of his meals are prepared. He can't shower by himself. He can't really do anything. And his wife is his primary caregiver, and she just takes care of absolutely everything for him. And she had been for about 10 years. So as the different doctors are coming in and they're consulting and things like that, of course, they're going to go to her as well and say, because where he can't move, she's the one who's preparing all of his food and bringing it to him. And, very rightly so, they're saying to her, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop feeding him. You need to get him on a proper diet, and the weight will come off. And this isn't the same thing as someone being a feeder. Last week in those documentaries, there was a section there where people were feeders, and they like someone who's fat, so they'll feed them more food, and it's what they like. With this, it was just a matter of she knew what she needed to do. She knew that what she was doing was not good for him, but there's such a deep sense of, misguided though it may be, there's such a deep sense of love there that she had for her husband that she couldn't say no to him. Because, as we all know, we do get to a stage where we don't care how fat we are. We want to eat that food. And she had a really difficult time saying no to him. So, as much as they were trying, they were still in that same sort of position that we put ourselves in most of the time. And just making things worse, because it's harder to make that change, because that instant gratification of that food is much better than the gratification a year down the road of losing the weight. And so there are, throughout the documentary, in the comments, there are people saying, oh, well, this is her fault and this is his fault and the doctor should have done more, and there's blame flying all over the place. But I think it's difficult to sort of judge that, because in your head you think, no, of course, stop preparing the food, stop enabling the behavior, stop doing what you're doing. But when you've done it for so long, and it just has become sort of part of your life, I imagine it must be difficult to make that change. Even just small changes that we're doing, just our own eating habits are difficult. So getting to a stage where you purposely are causing pain to someone, even though the weight and the health problems and everything else that go along with it are much more dangerous. Again, that sort of instant gratification that, or on the opposite spectrum, watching them go through that pain, saying that they're hungry and that they're, just watching them go through that must be difficult. So, although it is somewhat easy to look at it and say she's part of the problem, and let's be honest, in this situation, yes, she needs to stop feeding him. He needs to also take the onus and stop eating so much and be somewhat supportive in that if they understand what they need to do, and then try their hardest to do it. But as we all know, it is really difficult. If losing weight was easy, then none of us would be fat. So it's on one hand, you really want to judge them harshly, and rightly so. And then on the other, you have that little voice inside your head that sort of puts yourself in that position and ask, would we do the same thing? Because for me, and I'm not close to 900 pounds, but knowing what I've gone through, just being the size that I am, and even just in the past 2 months, the changes that I've had to make and things like that, and although we're going very, very slowly, making a change like that is difficult. And I understand there is part of it is willpower, and part of it is simply just saying, no, I'm going to have to suffer through it. And I'm sure there are other people, and there's a doctor in this documentary that says the same thing, that, oh, no, it's easy. But he obviously has never been overweight. He doesn't understand. It is more akin to an addiction than anything else. It's easy to look at someone like us and say, no, just stop eating. If we could, we would, and we wouldn't be fat anymore. But there's that psychological connection that's in there, whether it's because of, the actual act of eating, or whether it's an emotional connection, or whether it's comfort food. Whatever that connection is that's there for us, it's a strong connection. And it's, for some cases, mine included, it's lasted for decades. So trying to break that isn't as easy as simply just saying, stop eating. As much as things have changed for me, making the healthy decisions on what I'm eating and how much I'm eating, starting exercise and everything else, I still have days. Last week was one of them. I still have days where I don't care. I just want to eat absolutely everything. Even when I'm full, I just want to keep eating. And it's hard to break that. To a stage now, thankfully, that if I do that, then I'm going to get sick from it. But when you're in that position, you eat to capacity, and just being full and being sick is sort of part of that you think, okay, now I know I've had enough because I feel sick. But, excuse me, when you're watching it, I want to say to reserve judgment, but there's really no way I can, in good conscience say that, because it really is watching two people in such a self-destructive spiral that, he's killing himself with eating. She's aiding him by not saying no and dealing with, his outbursts, because he does seem to get very frustrated very quickly. When they're dealing with the doctors and they say, this is what you need to do, they seem to be eager to do it. But again, it comes into that situation, which I've never quite understood, that every single doctor is saying, we won't help you until you lose weight. And it's quite a bit, like 100 pounds for him. If he could lose 100 pounds that easily, he wouldn't be coming to these doctors for help. So, part of you is going to say, no, this is your own fault. This is where you've put it, and this is your wife's fault for doing this with you. And there's going to be another part of you that is going to sympathize, and that you're going to understand that if we were in the same position, we probably would be doing the same thing, whether we want to admit it or not. But it's a very interesting show, and it does follow him for about 2 years, watching his struggle, following his wife, and following the doctors that are trying to help him, whether they're shipping him out of his house to get the help he needs or bringing them in. And it's an eye-opener, because for some of us, or for the majority of us, I don't think that we're at that stage, but we can see ourselves getting there. And for those of you out there that are in that situation, or maybe you're one of the people that someone that's in that situation, and you're the one taking care of them, it's, again, not to just point the finger because it's so easy to blame people. But when you're doing that, when you're enabling that behavior by continually bringing food and preparing the food that you know is unhealthy for them, even though they're going to scream and whine and cry and, you're killing them. When it gets to a stage where a person can't get out of bed or can't go to the bathroom by themselves, there needs to come a time when the people around them stop and say, you can hate me, you can scream and cry, and you can call me whatever you want, but this has to stop. And not to say, oh, fine, just, leave and only leave them with water. But making those decisions for them is something that I think you really end up having to do. Because when you're watching this documentary, you're watching these two people that obviously are very much in love, that he knows he's killing himself. And what's worse is that his wife knows that she's killing him. And so if there's anyone out there that's at that stage, take a close look at this and go and find the help that you need. And honestly, as hard as it may be, if it means separating yourself from the situation for an extended period of time, for months or a year, so that you aren't helping in with that, so that they can get better and get what they need, then do it. Because unfortunately, there's really only two ways to go. Either one, the person loses the weight, not all of it, but some of it, and gets into a healthy pattern that way. Or, unfortunately, they're going to end up in an early grave. And we all know someone who is maybe not at that stage, and it might be ourselves, that we know if it continues, that's how it's going to end up. So it is unfortunately very heavy viewing, and it is tough to watch. But as I said, sort of reserve judgment, because we don't know how we would react in that situation. We know logically in our head what we would do, but until you're actually in that situation and dealing with it, I, for one, can't imagine that I would dedicate 10 years of my life to caring for someone like that. So there has to be something said for his wife that did dedicate a decade of her life. At the time of this show anyway, dedicating 10 years of her life to caring for someone. And there is a very strong connection there between the two of them, and you do see it, which is nice. But everything has a breaking point. So, and I don't mean to get all preachy and morose and everything on a Friday, but it's one of those things that I could easily see myself getting in that situation where I just kept eating and gaining and getting bigger and bigger. And some of us aren't lucky enough to have someone that cares enough about us to, take care of us that way. And although it is enabling behavior and they are actually contributing to, the bad habits, in their head, they're doing it from a place where they love someone. So it is really hard to sort of judge them that way. But take a look at it. At the very least, it's an eye-opener, and, it's not to sort of get you depressed on the weekend, but just to sort of take a look at a situation that we all run the risk of getting into. Maybe not to that extreme, but for some people that maybe you're at a stage now where you're finding it more and more difficult to move around, where you have to get assistance, and not because of age or because of bone disease or anything like that, but strictly because of your weight. And whatever help you can try to find, then go and find it. Whether it's a doctor or Weight Watchers or even just doing what you're doing watching these, as long as it's something that's going to be productive and that's going to help you in the long run get to where you need to be so that you can get the help that you need. But for right now, that is it for this video. Hopefully we will have a bit of a brighter weekend, but go take a look at this. I think at the very least, as I say, I'm going to start repeating myself once again because I always end up doing that. But it is an eye-opener just to see that and sort of take in everything, viewing from the doctor's point of view and from his point of view, and especially his wife, where I think that's probably where a lot of the difficulty is going to come from, is trying to feel sympathetic for her but she sacrificed a tremendous amount for him. And although it is misguided, it still comes from a very good place where the intentions are very good. But for right now, that's it for this video. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video.